Hi everyone, it's Clyde at Vibrant Soap. Only today I'm not going to be making soap, I'm going to be making a pie. I asked in one of my last videos whether it'd be okay to sneak in a baking video, and actually it makes sense because I've been making pies and cakes and cookies and all kinds of treats because I have a sweet tooth for much longer than I've ever been making soap. And actually it helped me prepare for a world of soaping, measuring out ingredients and weighing things out and all that really was helpful when I started to do some soap. So today I'm making my lemon meringue pie, and pardon the voiceover, but I didn't really know I was going to edit this until I got a couple comments from people that said, yeah, go ahead and make that pie. So here it is. So I'm starting off, of course, by making the crust for the pie, and I always like to sift that flour a bit to aerate it. Aeration and coolness is the best thing for flaky crust. So now I'm combining the shortening with a pastry knife until it's this coarse, and then I'm going to refrigerate that until it's nice and cool and chilled. Keep the form of that shortening in place to make it flaky. While I'm waiting for it to cool, I'm just going to grate some lemon zest, and I'm staying away from the white part of that because the yellow part's where all the oils are and all that good taste. So the recipe I think calls for 2 teaspoons of lemon zest, but I'm going to probably add about 3. Now the crust mixture is cool enough, and I'm going to add ice water to that mixture, 1 tablespoon at a time. Stir that up, keep the air in there, and keep adding the water until it's the right consistency. I think the recipe calls for about 3 tablespoons of ice water. I think on this day I actually used 4 tablespoons to seem to need that extra moisture. I stir that up, and I keep checking it with my hands until the crust sticks together without being too wet. You need to maintain that air in there. And I make it into a pancake. This is how I do it, because if you roll it out while the dough is still in a ball form, it just kind of breaks up, and you don't want that. So I'm keeping it well floured, and then I'm going to use the rolling pin, flatten that out. Just making sure that there aren't any big cracks to start with, and then I start to roll it out. So I'm mending little cracks as I go along. Then you're going to see me roll that dough from the inside to the outside, and that seems to work really well for me. So turning it over so it doesn't stick to the board, keeping it again well floured. There's that little crack that develops, so I'm taking a fork just to mend that, pushing it down into itself. Then I roll it over, and no one would ever know that there was a tear there. You can see me rolling it from the inside to the outside edges. Now I'm going to place the pastry pan, the pie pan, right over that and trimming off the excess. Saves you a lot of time later on and tearing off extra unneeded dough. And then I'm going to roll it on my rolling pin to transfer it to the dish. I find this way works without tearing the crust. There. I'm going to gently settle it into the bowl, and then I'm going to quickly just roll the edges under, and I don't push it together at all. I like to capture some of that air and think it makes the edges extra flaky. And then there's some areas where there's not quite enough, so I'm just going to grab some of my trimmings and putting it under there and rolling it under. And then I'm going to crimp the edges to hold it all together. This used to be my favorite part when I was watching my mom make pies a long time ago. And this is going to be a crust that is baked without the filling, so I'm poking holes in it, and that prevents the crust from forming big bubbles in it when it's in the oven. So this goes into the oven, I believe, at 425 for about 8 minutes. And then I'm going to set it out to cool. It's just a light brown. In the meantime, I'm going to do the filling, and actually starting with the top with the meringue. The recipe calls for 4 eggs, but I add 1 more egg so I have more whites for the meringue, and I toss one of the yolks. So there are the yolks, I'm going to use those as well. To the yolks I'm going to add 1/2 cup of lemon juice. Whisk that together until it's nice and mixed. In the meantime, I have a sugar mixture, just sugar and water. And I simmered that until it's clear and the sugar's dissolved. Then I'm going to add my mixture of cornstarch and water. I'm going to add the link to the recipe. This is an all recipe pie that I found online, and it's the best recipe I've ever found. Stirring that up, you see what the cornstarch does immediately. It starts to thicken it up, and I keep stirring it. Let the steam escape until it's a little clear. You're going to see, I'm going to hold up the whisk for you to take a look at that. It loses some of its opaqueness. It happens really quickly. That's just about there. Now I'm going to add my lemon juice and egg yolk mixture really slowly off heat because I don't want to curdle those egg yolks. And as long as you do it carefully in this recipe, it's just fine. It doesn't curdle or anything. Then I'm going to put it back on the heat, boil that for a bit. And now it's ready for a little stir. I'm just checking it, make sure there's no clumps of anything, and it looks fine. Cooking it a little bit more. This makes it a little more thick because remember the egg yolks are in there. And then I'm going to add my lemon zest and 3 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to stir that off of the heat until the butter melts. I'm going to put it in a glass bowl to cool it off faster. I want this eventually to be about lukewarm temperature. Putting it in the fridge while I work on the meringue. So there go my 5 egg whites, and I'm just going to froth that up. After it's frothed, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Help that meringue along. I'm going to whip that up. And then I'm going to add little bits of sugar, that's a 1/2 cup in portions, and I'm checking the egg whites. The peaks are perfect because the peaks don't lean over. That's how I like it. I'm going to take 2/3 a cup of that meringue, and I'm going to gently fold it into my lemon custard, which is now cooled. And you know how to fold things like this in so that you don't break up all that air. See how I turn the spatula until it's nice and blended, lightens it up. I'm going to add that to my cooled pie crust and using a spoon to make sure it holds to the edges of the pie crust. And I'm going to add my meringue in 2 batches to the top because it's a lot of egg white. Using a knife to fix that to the edges of the pie crust. And once that's all done, I'm going to add the rest of my meringue to the top. It's kind of hard to do when you have all of that on top at the same time. So here's the rest of my meringue. And then using a spoon to texture the top, just like I would in a soap. So that's going to go into the oven. It's a 325-degree oven for about 15 minutes, and keep your eye on it because of the sugar in the meringue. It can burn pretty quickly. So that's just perfectly browned on top, and it's all done. So I like to refrigerate it before serving it. And I use a wet serrated knife to cut that into slices, and it cuts pretty well. I didn't show you me eating it. So I hope you liked that. If you liked that and want to see some of my other cooking adventures, let me know. Thanks for watching.